Hello and welcome to another Agatha All Along live streaming all along. Uh,
Wow, it really takes us too long to make that joke.
yep, it sure did. It sure did. And at an early morning one too. So
Yes.
really, you guys are in for some incredible stuff today. uh, this we are back once again to discuss Agatha All Along, episode 6, Familiar by Thy Side. And before we get into all of that, what tell me about it. What was this episode about? What happened?
A lot. So much happened.
It was the longest episode of the season.
Yeah, I feel like truly, I know this is impossible, but I feel like somebody's listening to us. You're like, oh, you want more episode?
Got it.
Oh, God. Okay. All right, here we go. We start the episode in flashback as we watch one William Kaplan, who is known to us as Teen, or more recently as Billy Maximoff, perform the rites of his bar mitzvah while his parents look on proudly. Later, they party and they dance. And really, what we're getting the sense of here is that young William Kaplan is just a very good boy, which should worry you that they're taking so many pains to be like, what a good boy. The party includes a palm reading tent. William decides to go get his future read, and inside there is none other than Patty Lapone. She invites him to sit, and he removes his jacket and hands over his palm for reading. And Lilia says that he has a long journey that lies ahead of him, one of great transformation. Lilia notices something that it makes her go like deeper into her trance-like magic state, and the lights in the tent start fritzing, so we know like real magic is afoot. And she tells him that his lifeline is broken in two. That sounds terrible, but Patty LaPone snaps out of it enough to say that it can mean many things, like important life changes. He's becoming a man. He's becoming a new you. So she tells him not to worry about it, but then she blurts out the
Very
tower.
unconvincingly too.
Yeah, very
She's
like,
like, yeah, it's gonna be fine.
Yes, it's like her trance writes a check that her out of trance has to pay.
Yep.
And she's like, yeah, sure, it'll be fine. But then she blurts out the tower reversed, which is William's last creepy straw. He's like, okay, I gotta
go.
Yeah. Before he leaves, Lilia like grabs his hand and tells him that she can see that he's a good egg, and he has to enjoy the now, as that it's the only thing that's certain.
You're gonna be totally fine, but like really embrace the now.
Like literally the next 10 minutes.
Like, right now. I love the shit out of the next 10 minutes, bud.
Because it's all that you have for certain. William leaves, but has left his jacket behind. And Lilia grabs like a little wooden square and she draws a sigil on it. It's one that, astute viewers might recognize because we've seen it a couple of times. And she drops it in William's jacket pocket. After she does, she seems to either snap out of, like, again, her magic trance, or my reading was that maybe she's immediately forgotten what she's done because the sigil works.
The sigil, that's my reading as well.
Yeah, it's like, okay, she does it and it works, and so she no longer remembers what's going on. So she steps out of the tent and calls to the first person she sees, which happens to be William's mother, and she tells him to make sure that whoever the kid who left the jacket in her tent behind is, to like that he gets the jacket back, but she doesn't remember who that kid is. The party keeps going, but then is interrupted by the police. They announce that something is happening with the anomaly in Westview, so they are evacuating everybody back to their homes. We see everybody get like emergency notifications that they need to get inside their homes. So William is in the car with his parents, his jacket now back in his hands when he finds Lilia's sigil. They're all looking at the Hex Dome over Westview, and like they're distracted by the way that it's shrinking. But Mom, who is driving, should be looking at the road and not at the Hex. So she ends up having to swerve to avoid a car and ends up swerving off the road. The car is stopped when it rams into a tree, and the impact is primarily on the passenger side where William is sitting. His mom and dad come to pretty quickly and realize that William is in the back seat and he's apparently not breathing. So dad runs out of the car to flag down one of the officers headed for Westview. Mom climbs out of the car and into the back seat. And during this time, the soundtrack man is giving he's giving us like a heartbeat that's
Yeah.
slowing until it stops. And then we hear, "Good night, Tommy. Good night, Billy." And then after a pause, the heartbeat comes back as probably not William anymore, gasps awake, and he screams for Tommy. Meanwhile, the officer that dad flagged down who has arrived at the scene is Alice. So all of our coven is showing up one by one here. Uh, Not William recovers from the car wreck. He's in the hospital. He's recovering fine. All the scans say that he is fine, but he does have amnesia. And as his parents worry about him, he is able to hear their thoughts. And it's very overwhelming stuff for him because he doesn't know who he is. He can hear them worrying about him. And this only gets worse when his parents bring him back to their home. He has to quickly escape their worried thoughts and head up to his room. Where we see William's room very hilariously covered in posters for like Houdini and the Wizard of Oz and stuff like that. But probably not William anymore. Has to saying that he is William Kaplan in the mirror. It made me incredibly sad. R.I.P.
Yeah.
William Kaplan.
Yeah.
You seemed like such a good boy.
You seem like a good egg.
We cut to 3 years later. Billy William is on a date with his boyfriend, and Billy William is like playing with his sigil, and his boyfriend
Billiam, if you will.
Billiam Billiam is playing with his sigil, and his boyfriend asks what it even is because apparently he plays with it a lot. And Billiam says it's a sigil, which is like a puzzle, but it's impossible to solve. As they kiss, Billiam hears his boyfriend's thoughts about saying, "I love you." He's like, "I should just say I love you." So he breaks the kiss and very vaguely confesses that something happens to him when he's around people he cares about who are expressing strong emotions. And he says that he died on the night of his bar mitzvah and that he's only sort of William Kaplan. Boyfriend asks who he is then, and Billiam invites boyfriend upstairs to look at the dossier that he's compiled of like, what the heck is going on with his life. Billiam explains that it's all connected to the hex, which hilariously, his boyfriend's like, "I thought that was just a failed Avengers training exercise." Gone wrong.
Classic.
It reminds me of Buffy and Gangs on PCP,
Yes, very Gangs on PCP. Yeah, yeah.
So Billy pulls up a YouTube video, and the ad that plays before the video features Jen, so another coven member. The video shows sigils in the hex around Westview. And so Billiam explains that this means they are definitely dealing with witchcraft. And nobody who was in Westview will talk, but he's found one person who will talk to him. The meetup happens. It's all very shady. It's like in a parking garage with a man in a trench
And the
coat.
boyfriend is like, "Okay, kind of seems like we're gonna get murdered."
Yeah,
there is something about that dynamic of eager little Billy and his black boyfriend being like, "Please."
Yes, he did it too when Billiam is like, "You're so naive. You're thinking it was a failed Avengers exercise," and now, and in this situation, he's like, "I'm naive." So it's all very shady, but it turns out that they are meeting one Ralph Boner, who was Agatha's husband and also Pietro, sort of.
Evan Peters.
Yes, Wanda's brother in the hex. So Ralph is in the scene, very equal parts, a little ridiculous and also pretty tragic, actually.
Yes.
He starts talking about what he had to experience. Billy reads his mind and he's thinking, please don't ask me about Agatha Harkness. Please don't ask me. So of course, Billiam is like, What about Agatha Harkness, which freaks Ralph out? His deal in his deal in the hex was worse than anyone else because he was both hijacked by Wanda and being puppeted by Agatha, like at the same time. And Agatha made him do things like keep a woman in his attic and poison a dog, and be a bad influence on Wanda's twins. Billiam picks up on this and he's like, what are the twins' names? He starts asking questions. And when Billiam hears their names, he repeats again, Tommy, in like a very heartbreaking sort of, my brother.
My boy.
But Ralph reveals that he thinks the twins got sucked up into the hex and that Agatha is still in Westview. He can tell that Billiam is like a little too eager about this information. It's like, do not, that lady is crazy. Do not do it. Yes, please stop. Billiam is not going to stop. He gets back home that night and Googles Agatha. And he does find a few mentions of her throughout history. And finally, one of her being the only known survivor of the Witches' Road, which is hilarious because we talked about this like last week about why he would go and find Agatha. So she is the only known survivor of the Witches' Road. And he finds out that the Witches' Road is a place that can help you find what is missing. Meanwhile, Lorna Woo's Witches Road is like playing in the background. So it's all very like kismet as this all comes together and Billy decides to make his moves. We now get to see like the second half of the episode is like Billy's side of what we've already seen happen in the pilots. It's so good. He pulls up to Agatha's house. First view is of like Wanda's destroyed house, also very sad. And he opens his like spell book to see the spell that he needs to break Agatha out, and he needs a personal item for the spell to work. So that's why he breaks into Agatha's house to get it, and he gets her Mother Maiden and Crone necklace. Outside of Agatha's sort of delusion, the ensuing chase scene is much more comedy of errors and very less so dramatic that how we saw it the first time. And so is like for he in Agatha's version, he gets hit by Mrs. Hart. In this version, she just opens the car door and he like bops into it. So the interrogation of Billiam is also very funny and pretty pathetic. And so we see like this quick montage from there of other moments that lead us to where we are right now, which is the Witches' Road. Back at the Witches' Road, sort of in the present of the show, we see Agatha pull herself up and out of the mud. Meanwhile, Billy breaks his sigil, right? It's like no longer needed. And she and Billy, Agatha and Billy, have their first sort of like frank conversation. Agatha says she wasn't sure Billy was Billy until, and then she makes like explosion noises. But that he and his mother have the same very obvious tell, but she doesn't tell us what that is. Billy says that he doesn't need Agatha to finish the road, but then he can't call his magic forth. He doesn't have complete control over it. Agatha guesses that Billy is here to find Tommy, and Billy says, fine, they can finish the road together, but he doesn't trust Agatha at all. Agatha says, that's fine. And they take off to find the next trial. The end.
The end. All right. Time to start where we always start. Did you like it?
I did. I did a lot. It felt like it addressed a lot of like my little minor complaints from like previous episodes. Obviously, we've been enjoying the heck out of this, but I have had like minor things where I'm like, I wish this, and this felt like it felt like a meteor episode. It tied together a bunch of things, even though we still have plenty more questions. So it was just the right note of satisfying. And it also, I think, just because it was a Billy-centric episode, it was able to sort of like focus a little bit. There was a lot going on and a lot of different, we've got a lot of characters, but this one took a breath for me in a way that it was able to like focus, tie things together, and then kind of send us off on the rest of this journey. So I really, really like this one.
That's interesting. That is something too that you've talked about in previous episodes of like wanting some of the trial episodes to be more kind of focused on whatever. Yeah, I also like that, I continue to thoroughly enjoy this show. I like this a lot. I really appreciated all of the threads that this was tying up. And like the callbacks to different things. That's actually kind of the first like couple things on my list are both like callback sort of centric. I think we'll go all the way back first to actually maybe we'll start episode one, the episode one callbacks first, because I feel like that's going to be the quicker thing. I actually saw somebody on TikTok cut together the interrogation scene, the episode one interrogation scene with this episode interrogation scene. And it's really good to see the sort of like the alignments of like what Agatha perceived as happening compared with what was actually happening. Were there any like highlights in there? Any things that stood out to you?
Well, Catherine Hahn's performance in like this, like, I don't know, it was always over the top, and there is a way that it felt in those opening episodes very like true to the trope of like,
Yeah.
but seeing it like in this context, it just becomes all the more silly. And I don't know, the way that she played it opposite Billy in these scenes, I think just she's doing such an excellent job. I love her so much.
Yes.
And this really, I think, highlighted, just the way that she shines and sort of like playing these bit parts in her physical comedy. There's a lot of like physical gags going on as well,
Right.
that I really, really appreciate. I think the thing that like I was also sort of a difference between showing us the two things is like because we see Billy, we're introduced Billy through Agatha's point of view and like sort of that delusion, right? There's a way that I have read Billy maybe more nefarious than he actually is. You know what I mean? Like there was a way that he, I don't know, even with the like pretending to be like an Agatha super fan or whatever, that we've been guessing what are his motivations, what could,
Yeah.
in a way that it made me think of him a little more darkly than I think he actually is. I think especially seeing that like this is all in one night. He's like,
Right.
I'm gonna go do this, like very impulsive.
Uh-huh.
I'm not saying that he is pure or like unable to be corrupted, but I think that there is like an impulsivity to his like decision making, where in the past I would have read it as more calculated.
Yeah.
Things like that sort of change him and his motivations by degrees, and I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and not only that, like it's we've had it filtered through the lens of Agatha. Like
Yes.
this is Agatha's show, has been Agatha's show, and so it is. Agatha is deeply suspicious of him and has her like, but so that is obviously going to affect the perspective that we have on him. Not for nothing though, I'm saying it's Agatha's show. The in Disney Plus, the banner image now for Agatha all along is the shot of Billy from the end of the last episode. Now, like when I went in to like click to look at the episode, it wasn't giving me her, it was giving me him.
Yes.
So that's an interesting thing. I think in sort of the broader context, yeah. To the point of Agatha, of Catherine Hahn's performance too. The other it was so delightful to watch her do this opposite somebody who is not participating. Like we watched her do the scene in episode one opposite a participant, right? Like in that, because we're seeing it all in Agatha's head. So I forget his name now. Joe Locke is participating in the scene, is like being the team being interrogated or whatever. And so, but to see her like do the thing again, like run back with somebody who is like openly laughing at her throughout the scene, really, really delightful. Also, in this, like the accent that she was doing was so much more pronounced, so much more put on. We talked before about like whether or not the first episode, like maybe it was a nod to like various different procedurals. It is very overtly Mare of Easttown. She is doing the Kate Winslet Mare of Easttown accent.
Yes.
Like that is what that accent is. Point blank. That's the thing. Anyway, okay, so those are episode 1 callbacks. There's also a bunch of like quite a few really significant WandaVision callbacks here going on kind of throughout the episode. Obviously Evan Peters coming back. There's, like the Hex itself. The, yeah, there's a lot here in terms of WandaVision callbacks. What do any of those like stand out to you? Any big thoughts and feelings about being reminded of the greatest MCU show,
Yes,
WandaVision?
the real like sort of like prevailing feeling and thought was I wish I'd watched WandaVision like I don't know, and I haven't seen it since its original run. I haven't rewatched.
Mm,
And even if I had rewatched it, I would have wanted to like have rewatched it like yesterday to
recently.
really like catch
Yeah.
everything. But I think I don't know, the biggest thing is obviously Evan Peters like coming back, and like I mentioned in my plot synopsis, right? Like the tragedy and the heartbreak of it all.
Yes.
I think especially like hearing about some of the things that like one or Agatha made him do, smaller questions like who poisoned the dog. It was him. But I think probably larger questions about like was there anything there about him being Quicksilver, and like did it mean
Yeah.
anything that he kind of was in the Hex? And I think we've got our answer that like,
Yeah.
oh, this was just some guy.
There's just some guy. Yeah. Really unfortunate callback at for an L 4 years in the making for me. I forget if it was on this streams, or I have this recollection of Nick being part of the conversation, so it must be on the podcast maybe. But we had a whole like conversation about this, and like about the use of Evan Peters in WandaVision, and that being a thing that like people were salty about, basically because it didn't mean anything. And my whole thing at the time was like, well, we don't know if it will mean anything, which anyway, turns out no. Turns out won't mean anything. My consolation prize is that last week I predicted that Billy was looking for his brother, not his mom, so
Yeah.
I got that one. I have one win to put on the board from this episode.
Yeah.
But is what it is. Yeah, the broader tragedy of like what happened. Listen, I support Wanda forever. I have rewatched WandaVision since my dad died, not recently. And it like really only drove home for me the sense of like, yeah, if I had that kind of like, yeah, man, I don't know.
Yes.
I get it. I will never I support women's wrongs, but also I appreciate this opportunity to like unpack what it was for the people in it. This is something we've talked about a lot in our like broader MCU journey, of how like there are all these little stories that I would love to have more of. Oh gosh, Cap's Friends, that was like a running thing where we're like, give us more like blip politics, give us more of the world.
Yeah.
They did it so bad. They did it so bad. But this kind of thing of like, it like broke this man, like to have lived through this and to have had that experience.
Yes.
And I don't know, I appreciated that as a like a through line, like that, like picking that back up of like,
Yes.
hey, yeah.
I think also like it does really like compare well to the blip in terms of like asking questions about how it affected people at larger scales and smaller scales. So this idea
Mhm.
of like the Hex over Westview, right? There were people outside of that also interacting in some way with the Hex. And I think that seeing the Kaplan story in this, right? It's like this huge night, they're celebrating their son. They have to evacuate because something's happening with the Hex. We see dad like on the night that this is happening, Wanda's voice is coming through the radio. And so like there's this like eeriness of it all. And ultimately they lose their son that night.
Yeah.
And it's an indirect sort of connection to the Hex. And so I think that is like that whole story is like really sad to me. There were so many parts of this episode that were like quietly tragic. There's no like a romp like a rompiness associated with the show, lots of moments of comedy, lots of like levity that they give us through performance and lines and things like that. But when you think too much about like any one person's story in all of this, they're all straight tragedies.
Yes.
And so this whole time, like watching this, I was just like, oh, my heart, my heart. And I think it did a really good job of like sort of striking that balance.
Which makes sense given that this is ultimately like a villain spinoff, right?
Yeah.
Like it actually that makes a ton of sense that you would take from, villain spinoff, that you would spend at least a little bit of time being like, hey, those Avengers, your heroes really
Mhm.
fucked up people's lives, like
Yeah,
in a
yeah.
big way. Really like big. I mean, Agatha too, but like I think part of how you tell a villain story has to be with by focusing on some of the collateral damage that like even heroes are doing harm. um
Yes.
is it the same? Is it as much harm? But like even heroes are doing harm.
I think too that's kind of like how what Agatha is vaguely saying to Billy throughout all of this,
Hmm.
like where Billy's taking these really hard and fast lines of like, "I won't do that. I'm not like you. I'm this way. I'm that way," and Agatha's just kind of like, "Wait and see," kind of like, "Sure." Like I've heard that before, sort of thing of like, I don't know. There's a way that a very sort of quiet thesis statement here is like tragedy can make villains of us all. And
Yeah,
that is
yeah.
very much like Wanda's thing as well. So it makes sense that it's bleeding over into Billy's story and Agatha's story as well. And it's fun to see Agatha, like just seeing Billy, who's like, young and got all of these like ideals about who he is and isn't, and her being
Mhm.
like, okay, like let's keep walking the road and see what how you turn out, you know?
You're basically 3 years old,
Yes.
so let's calm down. You are way too brand new to be this
Yes.
high and mighty.
Yes.
Um, yeah, yeah, fair. Any other thoughts, feelings about William and his family? You kind of already touched on it, but
Not nothing else. I think that I mean they did a really good job in like very short amount of time getting us invested in these people. I think they also did a good job in showing us like just some really like normal good people without making it too hokey, right? Like
yeah,
they still like the parents sometimes fight kind of thing, and it wasn't like perfect, a perfect family, but it just felt really nice and normal in a way that like again underlined the overall tragedy of this episode and of Billy being here but William no longer here.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I also have no. Really wild, you're getting have this tragic accident and your son wakes up reading your mind. Really, really
Yeah,
tough. uh, um, oh yeah, Lily, yes. Patty Lapone being the one to do the sigil, was not absolutely would not, if you had asked me to guess where the sigil came from, she would not have been on my short list for sure.
yeah. I
Which was
also
cool.
would not have guessed that at all. It I think that we've mentioned like all of the answers that this episode gave us versus like things that are still up in the air. I don't know if we're going to get an answer to this, but I would love to know like what she saw in the future that like compelled her to do this.
Hmm.
What what about her, whatever she sensed or saw in Billy, made her feel like he needed protection from other witches?
I think it's Wanda. I think it's Wanda. I think it's protecting. I think that it's so in okay. In we have previously said that all you really need to watch this show is like if you've seen WandaVision, that's ideal, but like I don't know. And Multiverse of Madness, the only thing you need to know is that Wanda died.
Yeah,
I don't actually think that's true now. I think in Multiverse of Madness, like near the end, there's the whole thing where she's talking about about the prophecy, like that the place that she goes that she brings down on top of her, that like temple or whatever. is the whole like Scarlet Witch prophecy thing. She says something about how she was supposed to like rule everything, and with like Billy beside her, but she doesn't actually want all that. She just wants her kids. And like that's the whole thing. So I think that the purpose of the sigil was to keep Wanda from finding him.
Mm-hmm.
To prevent the Scarlet Witch prophecy from like being fulfilled. And so that's also part of why, like, yeah, I don't know. That's my like loose theory. I think it's a little bit like, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, that's my current theory.
Yeah, it makes more sense than like any one coven witch like not being, or Agatha. Like, what does it matter? Like, we had this sense last week too that we're like, I don't know, Agatha. What does it matter if she knows where Billy is? Like, there really
I don't think
isn't
she
like,
cares. She wouldn't care.
She would not care, right? And so that's why we were kind of like going round and round on like, why would Billy find Agatha and why would Agatha care, and like in the grand scheme of things. But like that, I think that maybe we're like getting up to the point that it doesn't really, that it was all about Wanda.
Yeah.
And so it means like, right, I was thinking about like him breaking the sigil, right? The completion of it, to me, I thought at first was like, well, oh, okay, everybody knows who he is now, so it doesn't matter anymore. But it might have been just like that. Well, Wanda's dead. So this sigil like actually hasn't meant anything for some time, and he's finally kind of accepting that.
And also, I think sort of the 1-2 of that Wanda's dead, hasn't really like meant anything or been necessary for some time. And also, like there's a clear demonstration that you're not off by a half hour. We started early. This is on us. Anyway, sorry. The Wanda's dead, and also him being able to protect himself. Like I think that my like read on this, my guess, we'll see what it is, but from what we just saw, that what Patti LuPone saw was something of this, the Scarlet Witch prophecy, and she was like, uh-oh, bad. Sigil, boop. So okay, Wanda can't find him. That's how she's going full Darkhold and cannot find him, because he's protected by the sigil. But then also there's the sort of like knock-on thing of like he is also still very vulnerable, and like that's because the thing that Agatha says to him when they're sitting on the log and they have that little kind of like tender little moment, she says something about how they go away when they're no longer needed. And so it's like 1-2 of like the purpose of the sigil was mostly to hide him from Wanda, but also like there was some kind of coming into his own that he had to do as well to like completely render the sigil no longer necessary.
That would also like fill in what is either a question or a bit of a plot hole. I would imagine it's more of a question of like, we see Billy say, I mean, it could also just be like a brothers thing. So Billy says that he can sense that Tommy is out there and still alive. So I think a very natural question is why he wouldn't sense the same for Wanda, or why there wouldn't be that sense of like, my mother is out there. But if there's some like sigil magic in place that is like disconnecting them two, that would be explained. But it could also just be like, I sense my brother. That's my, like a very like,
it's their twins. They were created by magic. They were, it's magic.
They're two sides of the same sort of like magic creation anyways.
Yes. Yeah. So we got to go find him. We got to complete our Young Avengers. She saw Billy in his hoodie in the crystal ball. I think she wanted to protect him from a whole bunch of people until he was ready. Yeah.
But the why though, like why?
Yeah.
Maybe it could just be an impulse of good of like, a boy, I shall protect him.
I shall protect this boy. Everybody wants to protect him.
Yes, but the sense to me is that there is a larger why of like, he was like, no, he needs to be like protected until such a time or for such a purpose.
Right. Yeah. I would be surprised. He was just a nice kid.
He's a good egg.
That's why. What more why do you need?
while telling you that you have 30 minutes to live.
You have
30.
30 minutes. 30. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, speaking of Lilia, something that I don't think we've talked about at all on here. But we've been going back and forth in our little chat. Every time Lilia mentions a tarot card, I look them up.
Yeah.
I Google tarot card meanings. Am I looking at listen, I'm not interested in being fact checked on my tarot card research, okay? This is for shits and giggles. This is for funsies. This is the first one that like genuinely kind of confused me a little bit. And so maybe it's just because I'm looking in like a stupid or bad place. Like everything up to this point, I felt like I had like there was a like the first card that she said was like basically like a getting the team together, like the meaning of the card was like teamwork, and I was like, okay, sure, that tracks, I get it. The tower from everything I saw, upright is like chaos bad. So that's, oh no, my camera went away. Oh, there it is. Okay. Like bad times, but reversed is just like is averting disaster. So I don't know. If the tarot girlies want to come leave me a comment and tell me why the tower reversed makes sense.
So you sent this bit to me and I hadn't seen the episode, but now I'm like looking back. It also says like reversed is personal transformation. And so I think that in that moment, she's also saying it's like the same thing where she's like a broken lifeline. It can just mean you're becoming someone
Personal,
new.
yeah, okay.
It's like that sort of like heavy foreshadowing of like you're literally going to become someone new.
Yeah. a very, very literal interpretation.
And I mean, from the perspective of Billy, not William Kaplan, he averts a kind of disaster by finding another vessel. Like he continues on. He keeps existing. It's like really sad, and we can probably sit, I think, even longer in sort of like what it has meant for Billy to like take over someone's life, and like you get a sense of that as he's like standing in the mirror like practicing saying that he is William Kaplan, and like you get the sense that like he never recovers from his amnesia, so he just has to like play act with this family for like 3 years, right? But at the same time, it is this opportunity to keep living. So I do get it from that sense.
Yes. Yeah. That's that card's for Billy, not William. I accept that then. Okay. Yes. That makes sense. I was confused because I wasn't trying to interpret it as a card for William, and I'm like, he's not averting anything. Yeah. He's transforming into being dead.
Yeah. I mean, the card read is for Billy, and so is the sigil.
That's true.
Is for Billy.
It's for Billy. Yeah, so, like, she's like, William, you're out of here.
She's really like, William, enjoy your next little bit.
I'm dealing with Billy now.
I got you.
Here's your sigil. Tower reverse. Okay. Thank you for helping to clarify that for me. I appreciate it. Let's see. Oh, we've been talking in past episodes about like the aesthetic of each of the trials and stuff. We can get a trial. We arguably did get an aesthetic of sorts.
I'm very curious to see what you're gonna say next.
In the William's love of magic. So his bar mitzvah, and then we go to his room. So there's like a little bit of there's like a meta aesthetic here, which is why, I don't know, a really conveniently chosen vessel for. I mean, I don't choice. I don't know. He found a really like kind of ideal vessel, because he's building his little board, compiling his dossier, his magic kosher. Sorry, I just snapped a nail off. Anyway, he's building. Oh, we were talking in the podcast, the Good Girls Guide to Murder episode, about that wall she had of like all the you know the stuff. Billiam has kind of a similar thing going where he's got like crazy shit, but William was already super into magic, so
Yeah.
there's a way in which like him collecting all this like creepy weird magical shit was like
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, I love it. I think that's incredible. It's perfect. Of course she is.
Yes, I do love a good sort of like Google search moment, where the character goes back and is like, "Gotta look this up." And I do also love ancient being tracked through history sort of
Yes.
thing, where you see all of the grainy photos of like they were here then. So Jolene was really funny as well.
Right up there with Loki being DB Cooper. Also incredible, really top notch. Let's see. Okay, well, predictions. So okay, checking in quickly on the predictions that we've made.
Okay.
Billy's motivation.
Yep,
We
brother.
have it. We've been so wrong about the trials. And after this episode, I think that we were maybe wrong about I think that last week maybe really was a trial. Like I think that was maybe real. Like I don't think we're gonna get that wasn't the trial. I do still think that it's like maybe unfinished
Yeah.
is the thing. But I'm like retracting last week's prediction about
Feeling more and more like it was just like kind of a flimsier episode,
yes.
rather than anything that was like purposeful, which is kind of a bummer. But I don't know. I feel like my new prediction is that this is gonna leave me like the ending. I'm gonna enjoy the show, like
Uh-huh.
from an experience, but like sitting back and sort of thinking about it, that it maybe leave me like 80% satisfied on like answers, and that there will still be a few things sort of it's going to be like the Evan Peters of it all, where like
Yeah.
a few years down the line we're like, oh, okay, this thing that we thought might be a thing is actually not, sort of thing.
Yes.
So yeah, I do. This episode has convinced me maybe that last episode was probably just a little weaker in the grand scheme of things.
Yes. And I think that like there's a way in which I don't know. I'm still it's making me question like what the larger project is here. Like there's a way in which even
Mm.
now, even like the Evan Peters casting amounted to nothing and was just like a gag in WandaVision, but the larger project of WandaVision was so it holds up. It just holds up. Like it holds up so
Yeah.
well in a way that like uh, just the grief story that it is telling, the way that it went about telling it. I guess I'm like less clear on what the story is that we're telling here now, in a way that I hadn't really questioned up to now. But like thinking about the weakness of last week's episode does have me a little bit more like, okay, I mean, I don't know. There's still I don't know where we're gonna go. But
I feel like there's a way that the storytelling has kept me guessing and like as much as like again we've talked about this, it's had certain lines that felt very like not obvious in a bad way, but like he's like Billy Maximoff, right? We kind of
yes,
knew, and that felt really satisfying. But for every one of those, there was a thing it did that I was like, oh, I would not have guessed, or
uh-huh,
it subverted the expectations that it sets, right? So I feel like I'm still able to give the show the benefit of the doubt of what exactly it's getting to,
yeah,
because it has taken me on like every like those twists and turns or whatnot. But yes, I'm also curious like what the kind of like end goal here is, or like what the final thing that it's going to say is,
mm-hmm.
because it does keep switching it up. And to that end, I went from Mrs. Hart can't be dead to then after Alice died being like, oh, there's just going to be people are going to die on the road. But now that we are down Jen and Patty LaPone, and we don't really, I mean, Agatha pulled herself up. Why? Where are they? And also, Rio was just entirely missing from this episode, like not
Yes.
a mention or anything. Now I'm like back on team. They can't all be dead.
They can't all be dead. They
Like,
can't all be dead.
I feel like they cannot all be dead, especially in episode 6. So now I'm like, who's coming back? I don't
Who's
know.
coming back? Well,
Yeah.
there's stuff from the trailers of Patty LaPone like Glinda the Good Witch looking. Like there's some shit from the trailers of Patty LaPone that we still have not seen. So for sure, we're not done with Patty LaPone. I still think that her end is going to be like a self-sacrifice. Like that to me feels like the way she's going out. The other thought I just had though, thinking about the coven, is I was literally just about to interesting. Okay, snazzy. Sorry. The thing I was about to say about the coven is that I think that because of the sigil situation, that I think maybe Billy is Blackheart. Because she couldn't say his name. She couldn't write his name down. Anyway, but there's alternatively, did you have Billy is the Green Witch because the black? Yeah. Sorry. I was like trying to form a thought and read at the same time, and they were not. It was not
connecting.
I saw it and I was like, I think this is related to the thought that's in my head. Anyway, sorry, I got there.
Oh,
yes,
Billy is the Black
is
Heart.
the Green
Didn't say his name.
Didn't and yes,
got it. Yes, yeah, I do love that. I don't think that means I don't know. Is he the Green Witch? That
I don't know. I don't. Yeah. Whether IDK, but
yes, I get it because I feel like you need a Green Witch to form a coven, and that's what was missing. But also, like I don't know that he is a Green Witch. They usually have like color coded magic, and his is
blue. Yeah.
So I don't know what that means. If that means like that precludes him from being a Green Witch, or if it was just like that in this coven, the last spot what belonged to the Black Heart, which is
which they just did. Their coven didn't have a Green Witch. Yes. Whatever. Yeah.
Or maybe like in the grand scheme of like fate, they did because either Rio and or Mrs. Hart. We're
still holding out hope that Sharon Green Witch. Yes. Wasn't the point of last week's episode to get Billy angry enough to manifest his powers, like his mother's grief caused the hex? Interesting.
I'm trying to think of like last episode in the I don't know. It feels like that is to me a little bit of a reach for all of the ways that Agatha was not in control of what happened last episode. Like it doesn't feel like she was necessarily exercising enough control to say that she was doing it in order to get Billy to like
I don't think I mean maybe she can clarify, but I don't think that that's what this is saying. But like the point, like the broader, like to the point of the episode, like purpose of the episode, not necessarily Agatha.
From a larger like storytelling perspective.
Yeah. Yes.
I don't know. We were building there all along, right? Where the moment that this kid surrounded by or like being led by this very self-serving Agatha would like snap or whatnot.
Eventually, sooner or later, she was bound to push him too far. He's a good egg, after all.
He is a good egg. How about you? Any predictions? Any other predictions?
Billy is Blackheart. I mean, he's looking for Tommy. Here's like a I don't know, sillier one maybe, but our cutscene is going to be Young Avengers Assemble. We're going to get an end cutscene with like Haley Steinfeld or something.
Do we find Tommy at the end of the road, or does it set up like some additional other like quest or whatnot?
I feel like we find I'm going all in on my young Avenger. Like that's where we're going. So I'm gonna say we find Tommy at the end of the road, and I retract my prediction from Haley Steinfeld to what's her name, Miss Marvel. It's Miss Marvel. Just because that actress is so excited. I feel like whenever they call her, she's like, hell yeah. And the last time we saw her, they was her like finding Haley Stein. She was the driving force, so it makes sense. She's the Nick Fury of the Young Avengers, so
Yeah.
it's gonna be Miss Marvel in the post credit scene. So
I hope this is good.
if you have Marvel, either call me. There's still time. If you haven't shot, you gotta go. Yeah, that's it. The chat agrees that they're not all dead.
Yeah.
Prediction is that we find Tommy and both Billy and him go and find their mommy.
Yeah.
I think as much as I miss her, I don't know. I don't think we're going to find mommy right anytime soon. I think I think that I love Wanda and I love Elizabeth Olsen, but I also feel like there's a way in which the story has been told. And also I just separately from anything else, she's just I think a really tricky character to keep using at this point because she's so powerful that I don't know, you kind of have to take her off the board to a certain degree, because what's the point of she yeah, I don't know. To me, she seems maybe a little bit too powerful to keep on the board. Like that more than anything is the reason why, if I'm Marvel, I would be reluctant to bring her back. But maybe they go find their mommy. Young Avengers with Tommy. That's what I'm saying. That's where I think we're going. So.
All right,
Great.
Wanda. We love you so much.
I love you so much, Wanda. I really do. I love you so much, girl. I support you in everything. And also, I just don't think you're coming back anytime soon. I think if we get her back, it'll be in glimpses. It'll we might get cameos and things. I don't think we're gonna get another big Wanda appearance anytime soon. But I don't know.
We shall see.
We shall see. We've been wrong about so many things before.
We are literally always wrong.
We're wrong all the time. Yeah. We cling to that 10%. Here's the one thing I got right.
Amazing.
Yeah. Cool.
I think we did it.
We did it.
I'm so excited for next week.
Yes. Also, okay, wait. If your chat here, do you Saturday morning better or Friday better? What do you want us to do? We've been going back and forth on this, so you can, I don't know, leave it as a comment. We're leaving now, so leave a comment on this video.
Comment. Let us know. It feels like more people are able to make it.
I feel like there's more people here than there were when we were doing this on Friday.
Yeah, for sure.
Great.
All right, let us know. Bye. See you guys next week.